Jordan Mason goes berserk on Monday Night Football with Christian McCaffrey being a last-second scratch. We react to the Jets and 49ers offenses, plus hit on the best waiver wire pickups for Week 2 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Fantasy Football Locked On podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Thank you for making us your first listen every day. We have made it through all of the games in Week 1, including last night, where I'm sure it messed up a lot of people's fantasy matchups, because about an hour and a half before kickoff last night, we got all the alerts that Christian McCaffrey was not going to be active in this game, which was a huge shocker, right? We knew he was on the injury report, but it seemed like he was going to be good to go for Week 1. So if you're counting on him to win your matchup, hopefully you had Jordan Mason on your bench, who he just filled in for Christian McCaffrey and put up the same points, basically, right? He was so good on the ground, putting up 147 rushing yards and a touchdown. So I want to react to this Jets and 49ers game. And then, of course, we'll give you the best waiver wire pickups. So you will be set for tonight when you have to make those decisions on your fantasy apps. But what were your initial thoughts of the 49ers offense in general, Vinny?
I expected them to run all over the Jets, so that was not a surprise. The surprise was who was doing it. And with Elijah Mitchell on IR, Isaac Arando's a rookie, Patrick Taylor Jr. is new to the team, right? It was all set up for Jordan Mason, who has been a key backup for him even in the playoffs. He scored a touchdown in the game, or a couple games, Seahawks game I can think of, where he was used to mop up in the playoffs and score. So you knew that he was the clear backup. And we've been telling you all along, when there's a clear backup in a good system, make sure you have this player. And now, if you were scrambling there to pick up Jordan Mason, that was not a good thing to do. You should have already had Jordan Mason. If you're a Christian McCaffrey manager, and this should be a big warning sign if you have any of these handcuffs that are very clear, like a Blake Corum we talked about. If something happens to Kyren Williams, and only if something happens to Kyren Williams, Blake Corum will have value, but he's going to have great value because it's a good rushing offense. The 49ers, you can plug and play Elijah Mitchell in there. We've seen in the past before McCaffrey. Behind this offensive line and Trent Williams, you're going to get a big rushing production. That was the Jets' weakness. You knew they were going to try to run all over them, and they did. They just have a different guy doing it. So Jordan Mason, again, he was, I think, below 50% managed before last night, and some leagues have this crazy free agent pickup system that you can still pick up players there on Monday. So then his ownership dropped to probably, or I would say rose to more than 50%. So when you look at that, his availability, I should say, really shrunk. So that said, a lot of leagues also put in waivers now, and it looks like that after this big performance, workhorse workload with a touchdown and just ran all over the Jets, he might be the starter again, Mason, because they're playing the Vikings this week. There's an indication that they might play it safe with McCaffrey because they're playing the long game. Vikings matchup seems juicy for that right away.
Yeah, it sounds like Christian McCaffrey could miss the second week. And even if he does play, you would expect him to be limited. Mason played so well. He's going to be involved in this offense. Now, if you did choose Christian McCaffrey one-on-one, I might be a little bit nervous throughout the whole year if like this injury is going to linger. But then also maybe at 28 years old with this injury, being there and the potential for it to rise, they might try to limit his touches a little bit and give Jordan Mason more work, which that just didn't happen at all last year. So Mason could, we'll see how much work he gets once Christian McCaffrey is back. But he definitely stepped in and played a huge role. Now with the wide receivers for the 49ers, Debo did his thing. He plenty good enough game, 78 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. He was used as a rusher as well. He scored that rushing touchdown. Ayuk was clearly rusty. I mean, he was the only bad player on the 49ers last night, I think, on either side of the ball. 2 receptions, 28 yards on 5 targets, had a dime of a throw from Brock Purdy in the end zone, and he drops it. He could have easily had a touchdown. But I think Ayuk, give him a week or two, he'll come back and be just fine.
Yeah, and the matchup was pretty brutal, and you could pivot to the matchup this week with the Vikings. Their secondary is a little bit suspect on the back end now. I think part of the reason they had some success last week against the Giants because Daniel Jones was terrible, and Malik Neighbors still had a decent game, right? In relation to Jones's performance, he still came through. Well, Brock Purdy's not going to have that type of game. I think with the Vikings, you can put up yards on them, so keep that in mind. They do go after turnovers and sacks, but the 49ers don't do a lot of that, right? So there's going to be some more downfield chances for Ayuk. And, of course, Deebo Samuel's value bumped up. As soon as McCaffrey was out, Jordan Mason was great, but you knew Deebo was going to be used more in that hybrid role. He's going to get the bulk of that intermediate passing work as well as the change of pace running. So all of a sudden, Deebo Samuel's workload increased. So as long as he's out, McCaffrey, it's also going to help Samuel on top of Mason. It's going to help Ayuk eventually and George Kittle. Again, we know 49ers get left out, and the game plan was tough, right? This was a very tough Jets defense as well, where you're not going to face teams that can cover as well as this team going forward. And Debo's just extremely hard to cover, and Mason was really hard to stop on the ground behind that line.
Yeah, I thought Brock Purdy looked really good. He wasn't good for fantasy, obviously, but he was a big sit for us this week against the Jets defense. Vikings, you can play him. They get him this next week. I thought he looked plenty good. He looked great. Now on the Jets side, Aaron Rodgers, I thought looked rough, not good at all. He started okay in the first quarter when he was getting the ball out super quickly and his first read was open, meaning Garrett Wilson. Then he was fine. But if Garrett Wilson was covered, Aaron Rodgers was a disaster. And also, like, Garrett Wilson put up a very Garrett Wilson performance. 11 targets, great. 6 receptions, 60 yards, no touchdowns. It's like nothing changed yet with Aaron Rodgers. Now, was it just because it was the 49ers defense? Tarvarius Ward did a great job in coverage. So did Diamador Lenore for another cornerback for the 49ers, did great against Wilson as well. I don't know if it was just the defense or this Jets, offense is going to look like this sluggish all season long.
Yeah, we'll see what they do against the Titans. The Titans actually gave up some wide open guys downfield against the Bears. Caleb Williams can execute. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to hit on those a little bit more. So I think the Titans defense is definitely improved here for week 2, but I think it gives them a little bit more of a shot. Would I feel comfortable playing Rodgers? No. Would I feel a little bit better about Wilson? Yes, in that game. So I think he has opportunities there downfield, but what's really hurting Rodgers is he has to go back to the well with Allen Lazard, right? He needs his guys to make plays. Mike Williams was on a snap count or limited there. So they just need somebody else other than Garrett Wilson to step up, other than actually Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. We don't want the offense to be through 2 Jets for the sake of Rodgers, but Hall at least was okay. He scored the touchdown, was involved. He knew it was a tough matchup. So for him to come through there, I think he can have a big week this week against the Titans. So again, Rodgers, might be staying away from him a lot. You shouldn't need to rely on him, right? Unless you're in a super flex league. But even then, you might have some better options. As a QB2, you're just going to avoid Rodgers here going forward.
Yeah, Rodgers, I have zero desire to ever play. Garrett Wilson, yeah, like you said, it should get better. I'd love to see him start scoring some touchdowns, though, but this was a hard matchup for them. The 49ers defense looked great. Breece Hall, and also a hard matchup, right? It's not as many points as you would like. He did get into the end zone, so that saved his day. He got the 5 receptions, so if you're in a full PPR league, you're happy too. But yeah, Breece Hall will have better days. I thought he looked good despite his 3.4 yards per carry average. I did think he looked really good out there just against a hard defense. So against the Titans next week, he's going to be ranked as a top 3 running back for me. Now, Allen Lazard scores 2 touchdowns. We're about to get into waiver wire pickups. He's not going to be on there. One of the touchdowns came with Tyrod Taylor at the end when they're getting blown out. And the other one came when it was like the offsides thing, and Aaron Rodgers just thrives in that situation where he's, just a broken play, offsides, he throws deep, it was a touchdown. Like 2 weird touchdowns. I'm not going to count on that from Lazard. He did get 9 targets in the game, but Mike Williams was on a heavily snap count, like limited snap count, and I don't care about Lazard moving forward.
Yeah, we'll see. I want to see a little bit more from Lazard. It was a bit fluky on both of those things for him to score. And again, the Titans matchup will tell us a lot more about the Jets offense. So I will be looking forward to that this week, and hopefully they'll have some ability to put in some points. Now we'll talk about guys you actually want to pick up. A lot of good running backs on the board, not just Jordan Mason. So we'll talk about them in our next segment. Then look at quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends you must think about adding on the waiver wire for week 2. I'd like to welcome a new sponsor here to Locked On Fantasy Football. It is Hims. And look, no man wants to lose his hair, but for men, it's actually very common. And now with Hims, the solution is simple. All you have to do is try Hims hair loss solutions, and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who got their flow back. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted treatment options and clinically proven ingredients such as finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. They offer personalized chewable oral spray and serum treatment options so you can choose what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online. Just answer a few questions, and a medical provider will determine if a treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to your door. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, so if you feel like you're losing a part of yourself with your hair loss, get Hims and get your confidence back. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/LockedOnNFL. That's hims.com, HIMS.com/LockedOnNFL for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/LockedOnNFL. Results vary based on a study of topical and oral minoxidil. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate for you. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. All right, it is time to get into the waiver wire. So Jordan Mason, if he's out there in leagues, like I said, he's about less than half available, I would say, in most of your leagues. Yahoo, he was definitely like that after last night. Everyone scrambling to pick him up. The next guy surprised me. JK Dobbins had pretty low ownership, and I mentioned him in a show way back when. If you're going to use a late draft pick on somebody, use it on JK Dobbins. Now, is he going to go 135 yards on 10 carries every week? No. But the Chargers are a rushing machine now all of a sudden. 176 yards. They get the Panthers this week. Dobbins has to be the top pickup if you can't get Mason.
Yeah, I mean, JK Dobbins has always been talented. His issue is he can't stay on the field, right?
Yeah.
So as long as he's healthy and on the field, and the Chargers are willing to make him put him in this type of role where at the very least he's splitting 50-50 with Gus Edwards, and that's great. And he was clearly the better runner last week among the group between Dobbins and Edwards. 135 rushing yards. He was the running back 4 on the week. He gets the Panthers this upcoming week too. And I know waivers aren't just about 1 week, but like I expect him to have another great week in week 2. I will say, just looking at the way Jim Harbaugh's offenses run, as an NFL head coach, his teams have averaged 30.6 carries per game and nearly 140 rushing yards per game. That's both most under any head coach since 2011. That's the first year that he was a head coach. Like, he runs the ball. Those are his offenses. They're going to run. And right now they have JK Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and Dobbins looks great. So if he's out there on waivers, he's my priority pickup for sure. Now, if Gus isn't out, or sorry, if JK Dobbins isn't out there, there are 4 other running backs that were involved in their offenses. Rank these in order of who you'd want on your waiver priority pickup. So you got Jaleel McLaughlin of the Broncos, who out-touched Javonte Williams. You got Bucky Irving of the Buccaneers, who got, a good amount of snaps in his first game in the NFL. The Jaguars' Tank Bigsby, who started getting some work once Travis Etienne fumbled. And then Alexander Madison of the Raiders, who actually out-snapped Samir White by quite a lot in week 1. Rank those 4 guys and how much you want them on waivers.
Yeah, I still think Travis Etienne and Rashad White are pretty safe. These guys are plus handcuffs, though. If you've got those players, especially, I think you want to go after them. But right now, Irving and Bigsby don't have individual standalone value that you could get help with in the starting lineup. Now, it comes down to McLaughlin and Madison, and these sound like either politicians or people who talk about politicians on a TV show. But when you look at Alexander Madison, he's just boring to me. This is the same type of back he was in Minnesota. I'm not buying this Raiders offense too much. I get that the Broncos also stunk, but I like Julian McLaughlin. I know Sean Payton likes him. They're going to have to check down the ball a lot. We saw the compressed passing game there. They were struggling to push the ball downfield to Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims. Bo Nix was being restrained. He's going to have to dump off a lot to McLaughlin and get some big plays generated that way. So I think he could have some standalone value that's appealing. Madison would be second because he did get that equal and better involvement than White in high leverage situations. So when I look at that, that's how I would start with those two. And then I think I would go Irving and Bigsby, but I would lean more to taking them as very premium handcuffs and good lottery tickets.
Yeah, I think I might be on the Bucky Irving side the most because I believe
Okay.
in his talent. He was running back 31 on the week. It was his very first week in the NFL, and they gave him 20 snaps, 11 touches. Rashad White was, again, incredibly inefficient. Well, we actually saw efficiency finally in that backfield from Bucky Irving. It was funny. I was watching the game, and one time I looked up from my screen while I was working. I was like, oh my goodness, what a good run by Rashad White. It was Bucky Irving. Because like I was shocked for a second, then I realized it was Bucky Irving. But they have some games against the Lions, the Broncos, the Eagles, the Falcons. Like it'll be interesting to see the way that they use these running backs. I might stash Bucky Irving top here. Jill McLaughlin, yeah, he's going to be on the field a lot, and he's going to be used as a pass catching back, and they are going to be down a lot. The scoring opportunities aren't going to be there. And even with the 15 touches this last week, he scored 3 fantasy points. He had 5 receptions and he scored 3 fantasy points in a half PPR league. That's almost impossible to do. So I don't know how interested I am in him. Tank, he did start to get the carries once ETN fumbled, but he still only saw 17 snaps. He just touched about 12 of those 17 snaps. I'm still not, you're going to need an injury from ETN for him. Madison does become interesting. We'll see how he's used. So I'd go Bucky Irving, then Alexander Madison, then Tank Bigsby, then Joel McLaughlin.
Yeah, interesting. I think it just depends also on the format. You might be interested more in McLaughlin. If you're desperate in PPR, you might be leaning a lot more towards like a Tank Bigsby in standard leagues because he could maybe score. So I think the guys are somewhere in between. Again, I think just make sure you get these guys if you've got the guy in front of them, so to speak, right now. We're not quite sure how those depth charts all play out, but make sure that you have some insurance in these backfields just in case it flips in a different
Unless you have
direction.
Javonte Williams, please do not roster both McLaughlin and Williams because
No,
that
you
back
don't.
is
No.
disgusting.
Okay, I should have said if yes, that's the exception here of the
Yeah.
rule here, but the others are definitely well managed, especially Etienne and Rashad White. I mean, Zamir White, don't lose too much confidence again in him yet, but just keep in mind that he was never really going to see 25 touches per game. That was never going to happen with Zamir White. He just has to do more and be more efficient with his 15 to 16 per game. So something to watch out there. Now, one backup that was out, and it could be pretty fluid, is the Packers. We did have Emmanuel Wilson right now and looked pretty good, and the whole Packers rushing attack looked good with Josh Jacobs in there. Marshawn Lloyd could be back soon. However, I mean, Jacobs, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be the guy. But I still think I would want Lloyd over Wilson there for upside behind him.
Yeah, Emmanuel Wilson looked good, but they drafted Marshawn Lloyd in the 3rd. I think he's going to start to earn snaps when he comes back. And they have a nice schedule, Colts, Titans, Vikings, Rams, Cardinals over the next 5 weeks. And with, Jordan Love out for who knows how long, they're going to lean on the run game, you would expect. And Marshawn Lloyd is a good pass catching back as well. So a guy definitely to maybe consider picking up now if he's out there. When you go to wide receivers, I doubt he's available. Do you know the roster percentage for Rashid Shaheed? Because if he's out there, he needs to be a major priority pickup as well.
Yeah, I think we kind of were looking at Rashid Shaheed, and the other guy I'll mention here is Brandon Cooks. They're actually going to be in the same game here as the Saints and Cowboys play each other in week 2. And these guys were a little bit more than 50%. So there are some people that were on Shaheed, probably because he listened to us and Michelle and I and said, he's another good late pick, like JK Dobbins, to take a shot on here. So good for you if you did that. And Shaheed is a big play guy. It's going to be inconsistent week to week here. It's not going to happen maybe as easily against the Cowboys as it did against the Panthers. So I would not play him this week, but definitely should be on your bench because he can be valuable as a wide receiver 3 in the right matchup. So can Brandon Cooks. And don't forget about Brandon Cooks. I think we're looking at where the Cowboys going to get another receiver beyond CeeDee Lamb. Well, Cooks is still on the team, and he scores touchdowns a lot from Dak Prescott. He looks to him a lot in the red zone. He's still getting key targets here. They got to figure it out with the rest of these guys, right? They're just a bunch of dudes that they're trying to figure out who's the next wide receiver. Jake Ferguson also might be hurt. We'll see what his progress is with a knee injury. So I like Brandon Cooks, but both these guys, they're less than 50% of leagues available right now. So, but if someone is sleeping in your league, go out and get these guys first.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks has scored a touchdown in 4 of the last 5 games. Shaheed has a higher ceiling than Brandon Cooks over the course of the year. Like you said, though, if you need someone for this week, I'm not loving Shaheed against the Cowboys. After that, though, he gets the Eagles, the Falcons, the Buccaneers, the Broncos, like some really nice matchups. So I like him there. Now, guys that will be on waivers, most likely, Demarcus Robinson or Tyler Johnson for the Rams, with Puka Nacua likely going to be out, right, for at least some time. They get the Cardinals next week. So if you're looking for someone to replace Puka while he's out, which guy do you lean? Because it was Tyler Johnson who had more receiving yards this last week for the Rams, but Demarcus Robinson played 72 offensive snaps, almost the same as Cooper Kupp. And Robinson's been involved in this offense since late last year. It was a really heavy touchdown score, too, to end the year. So I lean on the Demarcus Robinson side. I just think his workload's safer. Tyler Johnson, I don't, it's like, I would definitely go Robinson over Tyler.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, it's a little bit less volatile than what you're going to get from Tyler Johnson. It's going to be week to week, matchup dependent. I don't always necessarily trust him. He's still getting kind of used to Matthew Stafford as well. Robinson has been locked in as a key target for Stafford whenever Cooper Kupp was hurt and they need some help away from Nacua. So Robinson makes a lot of sense there if you're looking for some volume. Now, another similar situation, except the guy didn't play. The other guy, Josh Downs, was hurt for the Colts. He wasn't out there. Alec Pierce, however, was revved up as a big play threat. He kind of passed A.D. Mitchell, the rookie out of Texas, to be kind of that deep threat to play off Michael Pittman. Pittman, by the way, a sneaky bad game in week one. But keep in mind, the Eagles did give up or get that big play from AJ Brown, and that's who the Colts are playing this week, right? They're playing the Packers, so that could be good news for Alec Pierce to maybe stretch the field and make a long touchdown. But I think overall, I think Downs might be the better reliable guy once he's back. Well, Pierce again, big play threats. They're going to be week to week, like Shaheed. They're going to be disappointing more weeks than not.
Yeah, I'm checking for Downs on waivers, making sure I pick him up before he comes back. I wouldn't play him the first game back from injury. He's likely to be limited whenever he does come back. But Josh Downs, I think, plays a big role in this Colts offense, and then that would limit Alec Pierce. Now, two other available options here that maybe if you're in a deeper league, two rookies, Jalen McMillan for the Buccaneers and Devon Veely from the Broncos. McMillan played 52 offensive snaps. That led all the Buccaneers wide receivers in week one. Now it turned into just one reception for 32 yards. That happened to be a touchdown, 3 targets, but he had other opportunities for deep receptions there as well. I think I'd go with McMillan over Veely. That's for sure. Just because I like the offense better. But again, it's going to be highly inconsistent. I don't know when you can really trust him.
Yeah, go figure. I mean, we were talking about the other Washington receivers. Ermedinze is now hurt with an MCL sprain. He had a tough first game. You had Jalen Polk, who was not really doing anything there for the Patriots. So Jalen McMillan, the third Washington receiver, kind of steals the show with a little bit of big play touchdown there with Baker Mayfield at 4 of the day. So we'll see how they incorporate McMillan more and more as Evans and Godwin become more consistent in the Liam Cohen offense. So let's watch to see if his role increases. Devon Vale, Josh Reynolds, come on. This is really embarrassing. You got to get the ball, at least give Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims a chance. They're not going to get it done if you keep throwing to these guys. A lot of people didn't even know who Devon Vale was before this game. So, no.
To be fair, Sutton had 12 targets. He just
yeah,
4 receptions, 38 yards.
Yeah, we'll figure out how to get the ball to these guys. Like, this is just a better receiver. Don't just say, okay, you're fine, throw to Reynolds and Vale. It should not be happening. One other guy I'll throw out is Greg Dortch. I do not want Greg Dortch to be involved as much as he was, but he was involved. Michael Wilson had the touchdown. Marvin Harrison Jr., apparently they forgot they took him high in the first round. I think that'll correct itself a little bit more, but Greg Dortch is always a sneaky dude. If you're really desperate as a wide receiver 3, you could look at him at some point. But again, Trey McBride dominated targets. You figure Harrison's going to go up. So really of these guys, McMillan is the only one that kind of excites me with some upside.
We have some quarterbacks and tight ends that you can pick up as well. Like if you're dealing with an injury to Njoku or Ferguson or Jordan Love, or you picked up Caleb Williams, or you drafted Caleb Williams, I should say, or just, you're looking for that quarterback or tight end on the waivers. We got you covered. We'll get to that right after a quick break. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With the Sunday Ticket and the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. If you've never experience a Sunday watching NFL Ticket, I'm telling you, you're missing out. It is everything. You get to have up all the screens of all the different games and your little windows, however you want to do it, or whatever you want to watch. You can have red zone up. You can have multiple TVs going. It's just the best way to watch football. And I'm just telling you right now, it's what I live for on Sundays. But it's also super easy to sign up. All you need to do is have a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. So again, you just do that by betting $5 on FanDuel, and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Right off the bat, if you're looking for a quarterback with the Jordan Love injury, or you don't want to restart, you don't want to start Caleb Williams or another quarterback that struggled in week 1, Baker Mayfield. His next 4 weeks, he gets the Lions, the Broncos, the Eagles, and the Falcons. Would be happy with any of those 4 matchups. He was the quarterback 2 on the week behind only Josh Allen. And last year, at the end of the year, we were seeing some really good fantasy games from him as well. So this isn't just a fluke, I don't think, from week 1. Baker Mayfield's a solid option on waivers.
Yeah, so much for him losing his mojo without Dave Canales. I mean, this offense might be actually better for him because they put Chris Godwin where he belongs in the slot. And now you have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin into their total groove. They're got their chemistry with their quarterback. Remember, they had it with Jameis Winston for a while. They had it with Tom Brady. Now they clearly have it with Baker Mayfield. These are 2 sneaky veteran receivers that are going to get open more weeks than not. Now you have McMillan as a big play threat. He's going to have to chuck a ton against the Lions here this week. So that's the thing, is the Buccaneers defense could be continuing to stink here. I know they were better than we thought, but the Commanders really didn't do anything, and then they still were able to put up some points there. So I think you look at the Buccaneers, Lions definitely are going to be playing from ahead in this one potentially. So that also says higher volume. He was already throwing 4 touchdown passes last week. So I'm excited about what Mayfield can do going forward. And again, he should be rostered in all leagues at this point because, again, we just always sleep on him. Maybe we doubt him too much, but he should not have been available in more than 50% of leagues going into week 1, and now he will not be going into week 2.
Justin Fields is another guy. It looks like the Steelers are preparing to go with Justin Fields again, that they're expecting Russell maybe to miss. So if Russell misses out, I know Fields didn't have like a huge fantasy day or anything against the Falcons, but he gets the Broncos this week. And Fields was still the quarterback 16 in fantasy in week 1
That's
with
crazy.
156 passing yards, 0 touchdowns scored. And he was still the quarterback 16 because he had 57 rushing yards, and it was just a down week for most quarterbacks. Normally, offenses start slow to start the NFL season, right? So, like, the fantasy points will pick up for everybody. But Justin Fields, he's a playable option. I'd rather go with Mayfield. But Fields, if Mayfield's not available, I think Fields is also a really good start this week as well.
Yeah, Mayfield might be the better short-term streamer. Justin Fields, depending on what happens with Russell Wilson, that's kind of throwing a curveball into this. He might actually be the nice long-term guy, right? When you look at it going forward, and Denver's defense didn't look all that great against the Seahawks. So I think the Steelers can open things up there, maybe play and smash from ahead where they're not in this back and forth field goal fest with the Broncos. I think their defense and offense can pull away from Denver, and that's going to help Justin Fields because he's a runner. What was he doing when they had the lead late in the game? He was running. So that's what you want out of Justin Fields, and I think he's going to give it to them. I'm glad Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin didn't force him to throw the ball. He didn't need to in that game. They were winning with just field goals. This week, they'll probably get some touchdowns. Fields is probably going to be involved. So, against how I would look at Mayfield short-term, Fields longer-term, potentially if Wilson and that calf continue to nag each other.
two quarterbacks that had a solid game in week one. Derek Carr, let him sit on waivers. He gets the Cowboys this week. You're not even considering playing him, hopefully. And then Sam Darnold, definitely let him sit on waivers. He gets the 49ers this week. Like, that man has the lowest bar ever. He hits like 200 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, and they're like, oh my God, he's amazing. No, that was against the Giants. I don't care. I will say one guy that had a terrible week, Deshaun Watson. If he does get cut, like and put onto your waivers in your fantasy league, he is an option. He has an amazing schedule over the next 6 weeks. It was a brutal matchup against the Cowboys in week one, but he gets the Jaguars, Giants, Raiders, Commanders, Eagles, and Cincy over the next 6 weeks. That we saw him have good fantasy games last year in the few handful of games that he played. So if you're looking for that replacement for Jordan Love, that is an option. But also, if you're in a 2-quarterback or super flex league, pick up Jameis Winston. Just in case Watson continues to suck, he'll get benched, or he has this new legal trouble pop up. Who knows what happens there? But Jameis Winston is a good stash in a 2-quarterback league.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson, we need to find out one thing. Is it more Deshaun Watson or is it more the Cowboys, right? What happened in week one? Is he more just waiting for a better matchup? That's what we have to see with Watson.
Yep.
Or is he just getting in his own way and he's not very good and the receivers are not all that great, right? It's Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy did score, but it's not going to scare anyone, these receivers. And they seemed out of sync without being able to run with Nick Chubb in there. And Jerome Ford got his points later. They've kind of found that identity. So I'm not sure what you're going to get with Watson. Maybe he'll be motivated against his college replacement, Trevor Lawrence, this week. The Jaguars did give up 338 yards passing, but that was to Tua and the Tyreek Hill Dolphins attack, right? So we'll see. This is not the same type of attack. So if he kind of falls flat against a team that gave up the most passing yards, yeah, I think not only will be fantasy against him, but also his team might say we need to look in another direction if we're going to start 0-2.
Now, I have a question for you. This is going to be a hard one. Getting into the tight ends, obviously, Isaiah Likely is going to be the most picked up player this week, right? After his insane week one on Thursday Night Football with 12 targets, 111 yards, a touchdown. He was the tight end one on the week by far. If you have the first priority pickup, are you picking up, and let's say both Dobbins and Likely are on waivers? Are you going with JK Dobbins or Isaiah Likely?
Well, me personally, for my teams, I've got some tight ends that I still want to see that have upside. No tight end really did all that well in week one, except for Likely. And then it went to Foster Moreau, and then it went to what Kyle Pitts did, scoring a touchdown. I had Kyle Pitts on a couple of my teams, so I didn't really need to worry too much about it in week one. But yeah, I would think about Likely, but I'm not going to go, if I'm Mark Andrews, I'm not going to go panic and have to pick up Likely. I'm always going to pick the running back up because there are harder commodities there. Likely could also see games fluctuate, right? Andrews is going to be involved. So keep that in mind. But if you're hurting a tight end, which seems to be back to being a weaker position, more challenging than we thought going in, then yeah, I gotta go Likely. But this is where you have to know your team. If you've got running back depth, go there. If you're worried about tight end, go to Likely. So that's just kind of just how you economize where you want to go with your fab budget and say, this is where I need to spend it now, or this is where I want to put my high waiver priority claim. So that's a good strategy as well. Like, look for where you need the help. Don't just stash a guy. If you've got like a Travis Kelce, don't go pick up Isaiah Likely. I mean, if you have a shot at Dobbins, take it instead. He has a better chance to give you big returns and a difference than, oh, I got to decide between Kelce and Likely every week. You don't want that. So that's the thing that you look at as well. And a couple other tight ends we'd mentioned, Colby Parkinson, that is stepping in for Tyler Higbee now. They get the Cardinals this week. Cardinals have been up and down against tight ends. We've seen that all the time. And then you look at Tucker Kraft. These are some desperation moves here, but maybe Kraft gets more involved as a security blanket without Jordan Love there. So I don't know. Who would you rather take a shot there on those two guys?
I mean, it's kind of crazy because Tucker Kraft played 63 offensive snaps in week one. That was more than like Romeo Dobbs and Jaden Reed played, right?
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
he's going to be on the field. Malik Willis might have to lean more on his tight ends, like the short yardage. We didn't get to really see anything from Luke Musgrave. So will be interesting for sure for Tucker Kraft. And Kobe Parkinson with Puka out, he should also be getting more targets, played 69 offensive snaps for him as well. So those are two options. If you're, you lost out on both Ferguson and Njoku. I'm one of those guys. I know Taysom Hill did nothing in week 1. Another option on waivers, he can always score a touchdown. Or Juwan Johnson. That was a guy I was loving coming into the season. He was involved. I know Foster Moreau got more of the, more fantasy points, but I think I lean the Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill side if I'm going with a tight end for the Saints.
Yeah, just a wait and see approach. Not a lot of tight end values that were popping up after likely, but there will be help to come. So just be patient with that position. But definitely started with running back, as usual, having a lot of values that we didn't expect.
Absolutely. That is it for today's show. Thank you to all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every day, we will be starting our week 2 rankings starting tomorrow. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.